In the small town of General Santos in the Philippines in 1991, 12-year-old Manny Pacquiao walked barefoot on the dusty streets with his stomach growling from hunger. He already carried the weight of helping his family survive, selling bread on the streets since dawn. The sun punished his brown skin as he watched other children entering the municipal school with their clean uniforms and lunchboxes in hand, a luxury his family couldn't afford. Teacher Ligaya Mendoza, a middle-aged woman with black hair always tied in a simple bun, noticed young Manny standing in front of the school gate day after day. Her attentive educator's eyes perceived the gleam of curiosity in the boy's eyes, but also recognized the clear signs of malnutrition in his skinny body. After years of teaching in one of the poorest regions of the Philippines, Ligaya had developed the habit of preparing extra food for students in need. On a particularly difficult morning, when torrential rain had hindered Manny's sales, Teacher Ligaya called him into the schoolyard. Without asking embarrassing questions, she offered the boy a hot plate of rice with chicken adobo, a typical Filipino dish that she brought daily in an extra lunchbox. The aroma of home-cooked food made Manny's eyes fill with silent tears, while his stomach ached with hunger. This encounter transformed into a silent ritual between the teacher and the young bread seller. Every day, Ligaya waited for Manny to finish his morning sales to share her extra meal, never mentioning his evident poverty or making the boy feel like an object of charity. During these meals, she told stories about great Filipinos who had overcome difficulties, planting seeds of ambition and determination in the hungry young mind. Over time, Ligaya began teaching Manny basic mathematics, helping him calculate his money and change correctly. Without knowing it, she was feeding not only the boy's body but also his mind and spirit, giving him the tools needed to dream beyond the dusty streets of General Santos. Ligaya's selfless kindness would be something Manny would never forget, even when years of struggle and determination took him far from that schoolyard. 20 years had passed since those days of hunger on the streets of General Santos. Manny Pacquiao, now known worldwide as Pac-Man, had become a living legend of boxing, conquering titles in 8 different weight categories. His name echoed around the world, recognized as one of the greatest boxers of all time. The gloves that once protected his hands to sell bread were now worth millions of dollars in sponsorship contracts. Posters with his face could be seen in Manila, New York, Las Vegas, and practically every major city in the world. Each punch thrown by Manny inside the ring was celebrated as a national triumph in the Philippines, where poor children like he had been now dreamed of following in his footsteps. His story of overcoming adversity was told in books, documentaries, and films, inspiring millions of people to believe that poverty was not an inevitable destiny. In his luxurious mansion in Manila, surrounded by trophies and champion belts, Manny leafed through an old album of photographs yellowed by time. Among the faded images, one in particular caught his attention: the silhouette of a woman with a bun next to a humble school gate. The memory of Teacher Ligaya and her acts of kindness had never left his heart, even amid all the fame and fortune gained over the years. Despite all his achievements, Manny felt a growing emptiness, a debt of gratitude never paid to the one who had fed not only his body, but also his hope when he needed it most. With his finger tracing the outline of the figure in the faded photograph, he made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. His team of advisors was immediately mobilized to locate Teacher Ligaya Mendoza, wherever she might be after so many years. The search would not be easy, as the Philippines had changed drastically over the last 2 decades, with entire cities transforming and people moving in search of better opportunities. Even so, Manny was determined to find the woman who had shown compassion when no one else cared, to finally thank her for the food that had nourished his future and for the teachings that had shaped his character long before professional trainers entered his life. Manny's team initiated a meticulous search through school records in General Santos, finding only dusty documents and incomplete files. Time had erased many traces, and they discovered that the original school where Ligaya taught had been demolished years ago to make way for a shopping center. The former employees had dispersed, and many of the school records from that time had been lost during a severe flood that hit the region in the early 2000s. The search extended to neighboring villages, where Manny's assistants showed old photographs of the teacher to local residents. Fragmented stories began to emerge. Some said Ligaya had moved to the island of Mindanao after retiring. Others claimed she had left to care for sick relatives in Manila. Each clue led to dead ends, as if the teacher who had fed a future champion had simply disappeared in the folds of time. After weeks of fruitless searching, a breakthrough finally happened when a former school janitor recognized Ligaya's photo. With eyes welling up in recognition, Mr. Ernesto Dizon told them that the teacher had moved to a small coastal village called Barangay Mauban after suffering a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. According to him, Ligaya lived in modest conditions, depending mainly on help from neighbors and a small government pension. Manny's heart raced with the news, mixing joy at finally locating her and sadness upon learning of her condition. Without wasting time, he organized a discreet visit to the village, determined not to attract media attention. This would be a personal journey, a return to his roots, and a chance to honor a debt of gratitude kept for decades in his heart. For this special mission, he chose to travel without his usual entourage of security guards and advisors, as the helicopter, with local authorization and previously organized logistical support, flew over the rural landscapes of the Philippines. Toward Barangay Mauban, Manny observed through the window the same conditions of poverty that had marked his childhood still present in many areas of the country. The sight reinforced his determination not only to thank Ligaya, but also to do something significant that could transform her life just as she had transformed his so many years ago with a simple plate of food. The small village of Barangay Mauban awoke that morning without suspecting the illustrious visit it was about to receive. Manny Pacquiao, dressed simply in jeans and a plain white shirt, walked along the dirt roads, going unnoticed for a few moments before the first resident recognized him. News of his presence spread quickly, like fire in dry straw, and soon small groups began to form around him, with looks of admiration and surprise. With the help of a local resident named Datu Maglana, Manny was guided to a small wooden house at the edge of the village with a zinc roof and a simple veranda where an empty rocking chair moved gently with the sea breeze. The scent of wild jasmine filled the air as he approached, feeling his heart beat faster with each step. Through the half-open door, he glimpsed an elderly figure with white hair tied in the same characteristic bun, now thinner and silver. Teacher Ligaya Mendoza, at 78 years old, was sitting by the window looking out to sea, her fragile body leaning to one side due to the stroke she had suffered years before. The hands that had once shared food with a hungry boy now trembled slightly as they held a book worn from use. The simplicity of her house contrasted drastically with Manny's life of luxury: peeling walls, worn furniture, and a small altar with images of Catholic saints were the only visible adornments in the modest environment. When Manny finally entered the room, Ligaya slowly raised her eyes, confused by the presence of a stranger in her house. The recognition was not immediate. The years had transformed that skeletal boy into a strong and confident man. It was only when Manny respectfully knelt before her, with tearful eyes and a shy smile, that something familiar shone in the elderly woman's gaze. Her trembling hands touched the world champion's face, tracing the lines that time had drawn, until a flash of recognition illuminated her countenance. Tears began to stream down Ligaya's wrinkled face when she finally understood who was kneeling before her. In that silent and deeply intimate moment, no words needed to be said. The bread seller boy had returned as a grown man, a champion, a living legend. Emotion overflowed between the two as decades dissolved in that reunion, proving that acts of kindness, even as simple as sharing a meal, can plant seeds whose fruits blossom far beyond what we can imagine. The following hours were filled with stories shared between Manny and Ligaya, each filling in the gaps of decades of separation. The teacher's soft voice, though weaker now, narrated how she had continued teaching for 20 more years after meeting Manny, always maintaining the habit of bringing extra food for needy children. She proudly told how she had followed the meteoric rise of her former protege through newspapers and the small television that neighbors shared during major fights. Manny, in turn, revealed how the basic math lessons taught by Ligaya had been fundamental in preventing him from being deceived in his first boxing contracts. With emotion in his voice, he described how the inspiring stories she shared during those meals had fueled his determination in the most difficult moments of his career, especially after painful defeats when everyone doubted his ability to rise again. To Manny's surprise, Ligaya had kept newspaper clippings about each of his important fights in an album, worn by time and marine humidity. The afternoon advanced as the two conversed, with curious neighbors occasionally peeping through the windows to confirm rumors that the legendary Pacquiao was really there, in the simple house of the retired teacher. Ligaya shared details about her life after retirement, such as the stroke that had limited her movements and the loss of her husband. Few years later, without children, she had found comfort in the united community of Barangay Mauban, where former students frequently visited her bringing fresh fruits and news from the outside world. Many of these former students, although wishing to help her, more substantially, faced their own financial difficulties in a region where economic opportunities were scarce. During the conversation, Manny carefully observed the precarious conditions of the house, the roof with evident leaks, improvised electrical installations, furniture worn by time and humidity. He also noticed the various medications aligned on a simple shelf and perceived how Ligaya occasionally grimaced in pain when moving. Without mentioning his observations, he mentally catalogued each need, each detail that could improve the quality of life of the one who had been so important in his journey. When the sun began to set on the marine horizon, casting orange tones, through the simple window, Ligaya served Manny a plate of chicken adobo with rice, prepared especially for the occasion. The familiar aroma instantly transported the boxing champion back to those days in the schoolyard, when the same dish had been a banquet for his empty stomach. Eating with gratitude each forkful, Manny felt the cycle complete. The same food, the same generous hands, but now in completely different circumstances for both. The next morning, Barangay Mauban awoke with unusual agitation. Trucks and large vehicles had arrived during the night, strategically parking on the outskirts of the village. Teams of uniformed workers began unloading construction materials, medical equipment, and new furniture, while local residents observed with growing curiosity. Ligaya's house had been gently evacuated the night before, with the teacher being temporarily hosted at the best inn in the neighboring region, without fully understanding what was happening. For an entire week, the small village transformed into an intense construction site, with workers taking shifts around the clock. Ligaya's old wooden house was completely renovated. A new roof was installed, walls reinforced, electrical and hydraulic installations modernized, floors replaced, and windows enlarged to allow more natural light and a view of the sea she loved to observe. An access ramp was built to accommodate her reduced mobility, and medical assistance equipment was discreetly installed in the rooms. In parallel, an adjacent structure began to take shape rapidly. What initially seemed to be an extension of the house revealed itself as a small community education center, equipped with a modern library, computers, teaching materials, and enough space to accommodate 20 children. On the external walls, local artists painted colorful murals depicting scenes of Filipino culture and inspiring messages about education and perseverance, including a discreet representation of a young bread seller being fed by a kind teacher. On the 8th day, with all renovations completed in record time thanks to Manny's unlimited resources and teams working 24 hours, the moment of the great revelation arrived. Ligaya was brought back to the village in a comfortable car, still not comprehending the dimension of what was to come. Her eyes, tired by age, widened in shock upon seeing the entire community gathered in front of what should have been her old house, now unrecognizable in its renewed beauty. Manny waited at the entrance to the property, elegantly dressed but with a nervous and expectant smile. When Ligaya was led to him, the world boxing champion knelt again before her, this time symbolically, offering a golden key. With a voice choked with emotion, he finally revealed his gift. Not only the completely renovated house adapted to her needs, but also the Teacher Ligaya Mendoza Educational Center, perpetually funded by a foundation created especially to honor her legacy of kindness and education, ensuring that she would never again have to worry about money or health for the rest of her life. Silence took over the village as Ligaya processed the magnitude of the gift before her. Her wrinkled hands trembled uncontrollably as she held the golden key, a symbol of a transformation she could never have imagined in her most ambitious dreams. The first tears began to roll down her time-marked face, initially in shy trickles, soon transforming into an uncontrollable current of pure emotion and gratitude, inexpressible by words. With hesitant steps supported by her new personalized ergonomic walker, Ligaya entered the renovated house, each detail carefully planned for her comfort and specific needs. The modern kitchen with low countertops for wheelchair access, the bathroom with support bars and adapted shower, the bedroom with a comfortable hospital bed that could be electronically adjusted, and the spacious veranda with a privileged view of the sea where a new rocking chair awaited her. Each room had been decorated with her favorite colors, discovered through discreet conversations with her closest neighbors. The adjacent educational center was even more impressive, with the capacity to serve all the children of Barangay Mauban and neighboring communities free of charge. Beyond the physical structure, Manny announced that complete scholarships would be offered annually to the most dedicated students, ensuring they could continue their studies at the best universities. In Manila, a team of qualified teachers had already been hired with generous salaries and guarantees of first-rate pedagogical resources, something unprecedented in that impoverished region of the Philippines. When Ligaya finally managed to speak, her voice, choked with emotion, expressed an unexpected concern. How could she manage all of that in her condition? Manny smiled gently, explaining that a professional management team would take care of all operational and financial aspects, but all important decisions would go through her as lifetime honorary director. Additionally, a nurse and a personal assistant would reside in a smaller house at the back of the property, ensuring 24-hour care for her health and daily comfort needs. At the end of the day of celebrations, when the community finally dispersed and Ligaya could absorb the magnitude of her new reality, Manny sat beside her on the renovated veranda, watching the sunset over the sea. With profound simplicity, he explained that all that gift was just a fraction of what she deserved, for having fed not only his hungry boy's body, but mainly his soul and his dreams, when everyone else only saw a poor boy without a future. The silent tears that continued to stream down the teacher's face were the most eloquent testimony that true wealth is not in the material value of things, but in the capacity to transform lives through small gestures of genuine kindness. 6 months had passed since the inauguration of the Teacher Ligaya Mendoza Educational Center, and the transformation in Barangay Mauban was visible not only in the physical structure, but mainly in the renewed spirit of the community. The small, coastal village, previously marked by poverty and lack of opportunities, was now becoming a regional reference in quality education. Families from neighboring localities began moving to the area, bringing new life and development to the region, while the first academic results of the students already demonstrated significant advances. Ligaya, despite her fragile health, found new energy in participating daily in school activities, sharing life stories with the children, and inspiring a new generation of Filipinos to believe in their potential regardless of their origins. Her presence at the educational center had become a sacred ritual. Every morning, punctually at 9 o'clock, she was conducted in her wheelchair to the library, where young students gathered in a circle around her to hear stories of perseverance and courage, including the extraordinary journey of a bread seller boy who became a world champion. The impact of Manny Pacquiao's gesture extended far beyond the borders of Barangay Mauban. The story of the emotional reunion between the champion and his former benefactor gained prominence in national and international media, inspiring a wave of similar initiatives throughout the country. Other Filipino athletes and celebrities began seeking mentors and teachers from their past to repay received kindnesses, creating a spontaneous movement of gratitude and recognition to the nation's educators. Manny, even amid his busy career and political commitments, visited the center regularly, always bringing new ideas and resources to expand the project. During these visits, he made a point of sitting with Ligaya to share a simple meal of chicken adobo, replicating the ritual that had marked the beginning of their connection decades ago. In these intimate moments, away from the spotlight and cameras, the world champion allowed himself to be again just the boy Manny, grateful for the kindness that had changed the course of his life. The story of Ligaya and Manny transformed into a powerful reminder of how small acts of compassion can generate waves of transformation that propagate for generations. In each room of the educational center, a discreet plaque displayed the same message in Tagalog and English: "Never underestimate the power of a simple plate of food offered with sincere love. It may be feeding the future of an entire nation." This philosophy became the heart of the institution's pedagogical project, where each student was encouraged not only to seek academic excellence, but mainly to cultivate kindness and generosity as fundamental values. When questioned by journalists about how she felt being honored in such a grand manner, Ligaya always responded with the same serene simplicity that had marked her entire life. She had never fed Manny expecting any form of reward or recognition. She had simply followed the natural impulse of her heart before a hungry child. Her humble response encapsulated the deepest essence of that extraordinary story. True kindness does not expect return, but when planted in fertile soil, it can blossom in forms that transcend any human expectation, transforming not only individual lives but the destiny of entire communities through the contagious power of example. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.